anti-tobacco propaganda based on inadequate and misleading information influencing policymakers and opinion leaders. In the recent past, government has adopted extreme tobacco control regulations like high taxation, large pictorial warnings, etc. These policies have led to huge increase in smuggled cigarettes, impacting demand for Indian tobacco. And the tobacco farmers are facing the brunt of these policy decisions. And why are the NGOs targeting these specific policies in tobacco which benefit a few countries? This is all out of vested interest. NGOs have hijacked the legitimate efforts of the government, and they have pushed for unreasonable rules and laws. And they are receiving funds from abroad for filing PILs, influencing policy, and spreading misinformation. Huge taxes only make illegal industry grow in India at the cost of the Indian farmers. Indian products are made to look less safe compared to legal cigarettes which do not follow Indian laws. And due to these excessive regulations, all support to farmers is being choked. And the NGO's attempts to curb cultivation is based on unscientific data. But there are no such regulations in major foreign countries which are suppliers of foreign brands and growers of tobacco. The FCTC regulations started being implemented in 2004. In 2004, the sale of the market of illicit cigarettes was 11.1 billion sticks, but by 2015, it has grown to the extent of 23.9 billion sticks. This amounts to 25 million kgs of tobacco, which is being deprived of from the farmers of India, because the illicit cigarettes, the tobacco used in illicit cigarettes is not something grown in India. Our farmers are being deprived from this market. On the one hand, where illicit cigarettes are coming into India, the legal industry is buying less of the Indian tobacco. In 1981-82, the legal industry in India procured 86 million kgs, but by 2014 and 15, it has come down drastically to 62 million kgs. According to WHO data, cigarette taxes as percentage of GDP is disproportionately high in India. It is 14 times higher compared to the USA, 9 times higher compared to Japan, 7 times higher compared to China, and 4 times higher compared to Brazil. And due to these excessive regulations, Indian cigarettes are made to look unattractive and less safe. You see the packets there. On the one side, it is the cigarette packs of USA, Japan, and China, which carry only pictorial warnings, whereas India, which has gone in for stringent regulations, has very high content of graphical health warnings. The leading tobacco producing countries have an average warning size of 20%, whereas in India, we have stringent norms to keep it at 85%. And these countries comprise more than 90% of world tobacco production. Higher consuming countries like USA, China, and Japan, they have text-based warnings or warnings which are less than 30% as compared to India, which has a pictorial warnings of 85%. Japan, which has the highest per capita consumption of cigarettes, is having a liberal policy compared to India, and the life expectancy of Japanese is the highest in the world, and you cannot correlate tobacco consumption to the life expectancy of people. And the demand for Indian tobacco is also being affected due to the falling exports. Whereas in 2014 and 15, we had exported 235 million kgs, and it has come down drastically to 207 million kgs by 2014. One of the reasons for this is the government has withdrawn export incentives for the tobacco sector. Whereas the Indian farmer is losing due to these severe regulations, it is the farmers of other countries that are reaping the benefits of it. One of the countries that has doubled its exports is Malawi. In 2013 and 14, it was exporting 128 million kgs, but by 2014 and 15, it has doubled its exports to 245 million kgs, where the Indian farmers are not benefiting from these regulations. There are other countries who are taking advantage of this opportunity. And tobacco producing countries support their farmers with subsidies and permissions through exports, and especially certain countries like EU allow duty-free imports from least developed countries like Malawi, etc. Whereas Indian exports into other countries, especially USA, is attracting 350% duty. And various countries, and in fact all the tobacco growing countries, are supporting their farmers through subsidies, whereas in India the farmers are not being availed of, the government doesn't provide any kind of support to the Indian farmers. And these anti-farmer policies is driving tobacco farmers to commit suicides. Last year, 22 tobacco farmers committed suicides. This is the first time in the case of Indian independence. And many more farmers may be pushed to these drastic decisions because of the reduction in the crop size, and they are faced with a situation where they are not in a position to go for alternatives as their land conditions, the weather conditions, and the monsoon situation doesn't favor for alternative crops. The Central Tobacco Research Institute has clearly said that there is no remunerative alternative crop to tobacco this far. It has given this report after a lot of study in the tobacco growing areas. In fact, during the crop holiday in Andhra Pradesh in 2000-2001, farmers grew crops like red gram, Bengal gram, and black gram, but due to the bad marketing situation and those crops not being remunerative, they have reverted back to tobacco. And the CTRA study in this period also clearly shows that they have lost to the tune of 225 crores in those days, 2000-2001 time period. And the tobacco farmers are cultivating tobacco as there is no remunerative alternative has been found. We request the Honorable Members of Parliament to ensure that until such time a remunerative alternative is found to tobacco, not to put excessive pressure on tobacco as there is a global demand for tobacco. And unfortunately, it's the NGOs who are driving towards these policy decisions without a ground knowledge of the realities of in the farm sector. We undertake our agriculture in conditions where there is no irrigation. Our lands are totally dependent on rain, and we are facing the vagaries of weather.